Yeah.
Hi, how is everyone? Woo! CSS, I love CSS.
It's these daggone chairs. Everybody's way too comfortable. You need like plastic chairs.
We are zenned out beyond belief. That's what's happening. Thanks everyone for coming out today. Thank you for Carolina for organizing and the rest of the JS Fest crew. Really excited to be here. This is the first time we've given a tandem talk together. Connor has given most of this talk before, but not without me here to hassle him and take over half of it. So let us know how it goes by heckling us throughout, please.
Indeed.
There we go. All right, killing it. This is us. We're Connors and MDO on Twitter and GitHub.
I'm just kidding. I'm not going to use that.
That's how you can find us everywhere. As Alex said, we both work at GitHub. I've been there for just over 2 years. Connor, a little over a year and a half. We work on GitHub.com, basically. A couple of different product features around there, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Before that, we both worked at Twitter. I worked there for 2.5 years. Connor, about the same amount as well. It was a pretty good time together. We've actually been together for about 6 years now. It's the second longest relationship I've ever had. Yeah. In addition to working at cool product companies, we really like open source. I created Bootstrap, which is the B, and Connor created Ratchet, which is the R. Both of them are front-end frameworks. Ratchet is for, if you haven't heard of Ratchet is for basically if you want to build mobile applications in HTML, CSS, that's what that does for you. Bootstrap then is mobile to desktop. Bottom line point of mentioning this is that we spent a lot of time writing HTML and CSS. Adam mentioned he's been writing CSS for 10 years. I don't mean to one-up him, but as a good friend of him, I will.
He does mean
I've been writing it for 15 years, and it's awesome. But anyway, here Connor's going to take it away now with his talk.
All right, so... All right, you can sit down. It's fine. Cool. So, yeah, thanks for letting us be here. So we're designers, right? So this conference is really interesting. I've been to a number of them. Oh, one other one. I don't know why I exaggerated. Anyways, I've been to Australia once. But anyways, what's really cool about this is that we've got, like, designers and developers, right? Like, we got a mix of people. And... you know, even though we're product designers, that's sort of what we identify as. Like when people say, what do you do? I'm a designer, right? But we write a lot of code. And we work with a lot of engineers every day. And, you know, fancy to say we've written some Ruby before and JavaScript. So, I mean, a lot of these principles, even though we're talking about design a little bit, you know, it applies to everybody. So we're going to step back and just talk a little bit about, like, design in general. Like, what do we actually mean? Because I think it's important. So, yeah, design is a process. I'm not going to read just every slide, by the way. I now keep on looking up there. Yeah, design is a process, and it's getting to a solution. You got a problem, you're trying to solve it. And a lot of times design kind of looks something like this. And hopefully you can see the circles. They look a little dim. But anyways, you know, you do a lot of sketching, you do a lot of wireframing, you get in Photoshop, you get in the code, and it's like this whole big ordeal. It's exhausting. Design, gosh, it's supposed to be this uppity like thing, right? We're all designers. And what we realize is that, like, we're really just solving the same problems like over and over again in different fidelity, right? When you're sketching, and I'm not saying that any of this is bad, like this is a good step, but when you're sketching, like, you're trying to solve the problem. Then you get the wireframes, you get a little bit more context, and like you get a little more handle on the problem, and you realize that all those decisions you made are probably wrong, or like half of them are wrong. So you start making them again, and then you get to Photoshop, and you spend a lot of time in Photoshop, and you're doing that. And then you get into code, and you realize all of those decisions were stupid, and you wasted all your time. You have to remake all those decisions as soon as you do things like what Adam was talking about, and you have people using the thing, and it's a real tangible piece of software that you build. And really, what it boils down to, for us at least, and based on our, you know, the 6 years we've been together, as Mark says, it boils down to just working through ideas, no matter what we do, and then moving into code as quickly as we can, because that's actually where, you know, we think the best product design is made. And yeah, so I mean, this is the point, sort of what we're thinking about, is that product design greatly improves when you move into code. The design process becomes way more clear and focused. Your decisions become quicker. They become clearer. And we think they just make for better products. And that's why we like HTML and CSS. We spend, obviously, Bootstrap. We spend a lot of time working with CSS. So why? Why does code make it better? Well, I think the first thing is that it actually elevates the conversation. So I don't know about you guys, but I've been in like, I spent some time doing like contracting work and stuff back in the day, or old graphic design boutique firms and things like that, and you spend a lot of time like BSing everyone, like, hey, look at, this is the theme and the metaphor we're working with. None of that's bad. I don't mean to like downplay it, but a lot of times you end up like looking at a picture of software, and that's not very helpful. Like, design is the thing we're building. It's not the file that goes into the trash can after we're done. And so this conversation, we've time and time again in meetings, like you're looking at this piece of paper and you're trying to make decisions, and what that boils down to is arguments over box shadow, or I guess drop shadow if you're talking in Photoshop terms, like whatever. Like these conversations kind of get stupid. So when you're dealing with like code and you can get real data in there and real feels, it feels real, all of a sudden your conversation becomes way more focused. So that's one reason why you should move into code quicker. Your decisions get faster, and hopefully your product development cycle is faster. Code inherently promotes, or ideally, promotes systemic design. And by systemic design, we just mean like design patterns. As you're designing things, you find that you're building the same thing over and over again. Well, maybe you should simplify that. We just got done talking about a talk that is talking about this exact same thing. But even like on a higher level than just CSS attributes, we're talking about like modules on the site, like a user card on, say, a social media site or something like that. Like, we end up making those user cards like 15,000 times, and they're all different, and it ends up being like 5,000 lines of code, and that's no good. And that 5,000 lines of code is oftentimes like a very good indicator of maybe you need to simplify. Make it one module that works everywhere, and it's a much simpler amount of code. So code allows you to figure that stuff out way easier than a Photoshop document, or maybe 50 Photoshop documents up on a wall. And we'll go over that in a little bit. But lastly, and I think most importantly, and I think this conference is a testament to this, is that it lets you speak the same language. We're all here, and we can all talk to each other, and we have a commonality. No matter if you are like a hardcore visual designer that works with CSS, or a hardcore, engineer that's working mainly with JavaScript or whatever, go down the list. We all can look at this stuff, and it boils down to text, that we can all speak the same language, and we can all, with software like Github, shameless plug, we can all work together. And I think that's really important because it's really hard. Mark and I tried to like collaborate over, this document, this keynote document. It went horrible. It was terrible. I just didn't make any changes. It was terrible. But code, like this is all just code, which I guess we could have done that. I don't know. Realization right now. Would have let us speak the same language and work better together. So I think that's another benefit of the design process in code. So anyways.
So putting that into perspective a little bit, one of the biggest projects that Connor and I had the privilege to work on was Nunu Twitter. And if you're not familiar with this hashtag, Nunu Twitter refers to the version of Twitter.com and then the mobile clients that came out exactly 3 years and 1 day ago, which was when they went from the sliding drawer to the expanding, collapsing tweets on Twitter.com. We worked on that. We worked on that for 6 months in early 2000 or mid 2011. All the way to early December. So the gist of this talk should be stuff that hopefully we all realize and at least know or have heard people talk about, which is that code is better. Let's get to code faster because that's where everything's going to be anyway, so why not just move there very quickly. So hopefully this shouldn't be anything too profound. We just want to explain some cool stories, I think, from this. So this is Nunu Twitter. This is what it looked like. It's kind of pretty similar still, except they've changed the header and a couple other things. They've done some new type and whatnot, but so Jack Dorsey came back in mid 2011. He's like, I'm going to put my mark on this this product again. And so he pulled a bunch of designers, there were about a dozen of us or so, into a conference room, and we basically stayed there for 4 weeks. It was a 4-week design sprint. And the idea was to basically whiteboard and then go to Photoshop and mock up the iPhone clients and the desktop web clients of how this brand new reimagining of this product would look. And so it wasn't very pretty to start. There's a lot of sketches here. There's a lot of there's a nav mental model. I don't remember what it was, but there was 3 circles above it, and I think that's what we were getting at. It was like, we just need 3 things. But it was like we couldn't figure any of that out by just whiteboarding and doing tons of Photoshop mockups. And I can tell you why we didn't figure it out by doing tons of Photoshop mockups. It's because we did a ton of Photoshop mockups. for every single view, and it's a little grainy. It's actually horrible to look at. I'm sorry. But we had these monster documents, and these are literally every single one of these phones and screens is a PSD. And when we updated one, we had to update about 4,000 more, which was awesome at the time, but not really. And we did the same for desktop, and then we did the same for our M5 client, HTML5 client, and then we did the same for our Android client. And so that was the first 4 weeks. It was awesome. We just photoshopped all the things. And then our boss pulls us aside, and he tells us this: go prototype it. But don't write prototype code. This is going right to production because we don't have time to write prototype code. And we're like, cool.
We got this.
We got this. No problem. We can do this. And then we start thinking about it because we're like, we're going to rewrite Twitter.com. That's unbelievably awesome. And then it's, oh no. What are we going to do? How do we do that? And there's this range of emotion in this couple of weeks while we try to do this. And so myself, Connor, and one other guy are on this, we're tasked with rewriting all of Twitter.com's HTML and CSS. And we're like, let's just start programming. Let's just get right to it. Shout out to Jessica Dillon for the photo here. She tweeted it a couple months ago. I think it's fantastic. So we just started coding. And this is the first time we actually realized this, which is that PSDs don't mean squat when you're building things on the web, because you'll have this pixel-perfect design, but once you actually start to code it, you realize all these different things, and a lot of them Adam brought up as well, and is that you're going to have all these different people accessing this content from different devices, and you don't know their situation. You just have to do your best to accommodate for all those unknowns. And so when we started coding this, we coded it up in maybe like a week, a real basic prototype here of it, and then we loaded it in IE7 and it just promptly crashed the entire computer. Fun fact, this is because we were using HTML semantic elements and the HTML5 shim, which apparently just didn't work for IE7
Welcome to
at that version or something, so we had to scrap all those plans and rewrote that entirely. But we would not have realized that if we just stuck in Photoshop for even longer while we tried to figure out all these design decisions. One of those design decisions, for example, was consolidating all these similar things into one component, one instance of this component. Have one thing do one thing really, really well. And an example of that is like an avatar, full name, username, or 2 lines of text next to it. We had about 6 of those in those 4,000 mock-ups in Photoshop that we had done. And so when we got them, and we're starting to code this for the engineers, with the engineers, we're seeing stuff like this, where it's like, this is the same thing, but slightly different. And we, being the lazy people that we are, we don't want to code the same thing multiple times. So we said, no, we're doing one thing, and this is what it's going to be. And so we became like an intermediary between the rest of design and the people that actually know engineering, that are writing all the JavaScript and then the Rails code to actually power this stuff. One component, one piece of data. It pushed the product forward because instead of having 6 different things that users would see that are slightly the same, they're going to see just one thing, and that's how they know that they're actually looking at Twitter. They're seeing the same thing. What's actually interesting about this is it maps really well to today's frameworks and style guides. If you go to a company and they have a style guide, this is how we do this. This is how we do buttons and forms and how we lay out our pages and things like that. It's a lot of that's shared knowledge, but a lot of it's also unique. Lastly, 3 years ago, we didn't really know this. Like, this is still a thing people are talking about today. Is like it's at GitHub, it's not shipped until it's fast. And at Twitter, when we're crashing things that 500 million monthly uniques, I think, we're trying to access, that's not a good thing. So speed becomes the feature that we talk about. So instead of having the conversation about what size box shadow we're going to use, we said, no box shadow, because browsers 3 years ago couldn't do it. Especially IE9 at the time, just one of the amount of box shadows we wanted to do. And if you remember Twitter.com, it's infinite scroll. You're just getting more and more tweets, more and more box shadows, and it's just just bringing the page to a crawl. So it answered all those stylistic questions and allowed us to focus on the actual interactions and the speed and the overall picture of the product, and it was immensely useful. And I think I can speak for the both of us when I say it was by far the most illuminating and awesome project we've ever worked on.
You're not allowed to speak for me.
But it was awesome. And it's carried forward in the 3 years since then that we released that into more projects we worked on at Twitter and even projects we worked on GitHub. So see what that looks like. Yeah,
so I mean, we talked a little bit about Twitter. We joke around, like, it's been like 2.5, almost 3 years since we were at Twitter. We should probably stop talking about Twitter for a while. It's in the past, Mark. Anyways, So let's talk about Twitter a little bit. Yeah, so I mean, we did Twitter.com, Nunu Twitter, and then we had to iterate on it. So I mean, one of the first projects we sort of picked up after that was the profile redesign. So you kind of have me to blame for like this. Well, not really. I can't really take credit for the centered avatar. Somebody centered an avatar before I did. But anyways, we started doing this project, and we started falling into the same traps. Like, all right, let's start doing Photoshop documents for 1,000 different every, permutation of this profile, everything that could happen. So, yeah, we did that for about a day, and I was like, oh, wait, I remember. We already figured out what not to do in this project. So we started coding it again, right? And this is just a mobile prototype. We mentioned that a lot of Bootstrap and Ratchet, our open source projects, came out of our work at Twitter. Well, this is a perfect example. This is like sort of what Ratchet, which was a mobile iOS prototyping tool, originally came out of. And so we started building this stuff, and it did a couple of things. Obviously, we already talked about letting us figure out, real data, even if it's just JSON dumps that we were able to plug in. It let us do user testing, let us get it in front of users and actually hand it to them. But one of the biggest things this particular project actually taught us was it allowed a small group of people to get a lot of momentum around a very simple idea in a big company. I don't know about you guys. Like, obviously, Adam mentioned Salesforce. That's a pretty big company. A little bigger. It's a medium size, would you say? Anyways, yeah, some of us may work at big companies. It's really hard to get momentum going. Well, I think code, in our experience, has proven that it's like really easy to get momentum when you're actually to have something that feels real. So in this particular case, like, we're running into a bunch of roadblocks. I won't name names, but anyways, I'm just kidding. I will name names. It was Mark. JK.
False.
I was able to take, the phone and say, all right, here's this profile. Here's something cool we could do really quickly, and just go up to the CEO, go up to Dick and say, hey, man, can we build this? Like, it'd be really cool if we could build this. And, of course, he's like, it looks done. Why isn't it shipped, right? Because, he's not trying to figure out this low-level organizational crap. He just wants to ship product and get stuff done. And so, like, you get that momentum going, and, yeah, it was really cool. So, I mean, this is just one example. So again, not to talk about Twitter forever. I went over to GitHub, and we've been talking a lot about big projects like Nunu Twitter and profiles. That's pretty cool. But this really just applies to everything. So this is a really small project. First project I worked on at GitHub, I just sort of grabbed, I looked at the site and I was like, what sucks on github.com that I could fix really simply? And it was our sign-up page, our join page. And I sort of was able to open up a pull request. And of course, this is what GitHub's based around. Open up a pull request, cut a branch, and start working on it. So it was really cool to be able to like get in there, start designing some stuff. But just roping back to like that design process, it's not saying, this isn't a design in the browser talk. Like, we're not trying to say like old design philosophies and old design techniques are antiquated and you should throw them out and you're a loser if you use them. Because I sketch all day long. Like, this is sort of like what I think is, one of the things that allows you to encode faster is getting your ideas really quickly, going back to that simplified process. Just get your idea out as quickly as possible, whether it's a Sharpie or a pen, and then move it through to code as quickly as possible. So, I mean, this is just a quick flow, but it's just another example of how we were able to get momentum around in just a new company. I didn't know anybody but Mark. And be able to get something shipped really quickly. And obviously it's going to vary. You're going to get different mileage from company to company. But in general, whether there's a lot of bureaucracy or none at all, like it's proven to be like a really good technique. And of the many right ways of doing something, this is one that's worked out for us.
The other one for me has been SplitThis, which until very recently was probably the most requested feature in all of GitHub's history. How many people use SplitThis? Side-by-side diffs? Yes!
Nobody.
Like half the room, at least half the room, Connor. Come on. Keep your eyes checked. So in addition to punny branch names, we jump right into pull requests because we can actually show people these things. About a year and a half ago, I did a quick mock-up and then tweeted with some code and tried to make side-by-side diffs happen, and I just couldn't because the code was so convoluted. In that case, I got shut down. And I shut myself down by trying to do even more mock-ups with it. And then I got a little bit more momentum behind me, and I was able to do it after some brief refactoring to our diffing code. And we made it happen by opening a pull request. And exactly 2 months later, we had it shipped to the entire user base. And so it went about 2.5 weeks of like in this code, in this pull request here. And it includes screenshots from the stuff that I'd worked on. You see today's SplitThis, they actually collapsed the additions and deletions onto combined rows, whereas the original prototype didn't. So that was a product decision we made after we started feeling it out in the browser, after we started actually using it ourselves. Because can you imagine trying to design like diffs in Photoshop or Sketch? That sounds horrendous. I'd have to copy and paste code a bunch of times, and then, by the way, we just shipped syntax highlighting on diffs today. We'd have to do that too, because that was going on at the same time, and trying to recreate all this stuff was just horrible. So we figured out the basics, jumped into code, opened up a branch, or started a branch, opened a pull request. And we got this cool thing at the top, my top comment. You can actually play with it on a staging environment because we have this cool thing called branch labs. We just push code out there. And I got some vulgar commits and some really shitty commits there too. And we just kept iterating on this branch, and we actually got to play with it. And that's the point, is that you get to data, you get to those real feels of like, oh, click this button, and all of a sudden I have a split diff, and I'm writing these comments on one side and these comments on another side, and I'm telling Connor how awesome or how bad his code is, and that's awesome. That's how we should be doing these things, is as close to the end goal as possible. And that's what we basically want to reiterate today, is just that get to code real fast, and no matter if you're a designer or a developer by title, you will be an awesome product designer because you're building it where it's going to end up. And that's what's most exciting about what we do, why we write all the HTML and CSS that we do. And that, I think, about wraps it up for us. Thanks so much for coming out, everybody. Appreciate it.